Destiny 2 is a game that is jam-packed with a plethora of material and play modes to choose from. But of course, being a new player, it can be daunting to see all these things in front of you. So in this video, I'm going to break it down fundamentally and give you 3 of the best modes to start out with as a new player in Destiny 2. All that being said, if you'd like to be a part of a great sci-fi fantasy community that loves Destiny 2 and much more, then be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's go straight into the first play mode. So after you've completed a new light journey and you're looking for something to play consistently, I would highly recommend Gambit as a new player coming in. And that's because when I first came in, and I'm still technically brand new, it's only been about 30 plus hours now. The reason why I like Gambit a lot as a new player is because the game incorporates both the PvE element, but also the PvP element. And so it combines both in a really fun and exciting way. And the whole game plan of Gambit is to collect, gather as many motes as quickly as you possibly can, while fending off the opposing team from completing the same mission, which is to beat the final boss. And once you've defeated the final boss, then the winner gets the spoils, but also the loser too gets spoils. Not as much, but you still get something for your work, which is nice. And that's what I love about Destiny 2, is that even when you do lose, the game still rewards you for your efforts. And I really appreciate that as a new player coming in. Because a lot of times when you lose, you often get this very, negative feeling. You feel like, oh my gosh, like I worked so hard, I got nothing for it. But Gambit really does reward you, even though you've lost. You still earn your glimmer, you still earn some form of reward that just makes you walk away from the mode thinking, wow, this is really cool. So I highly recommend Gambit. It's really fun, it's really exciting. And like I said, the whole game plan is to gather as many motes as quickly as possible, bring it back to your base while fighting off hordes of enemies, trying out different strategies and different guns, because one of the things about Gambit is that it's RNG. That is, the drifter is going to choose which enemy that you encounter. So you might encounter a hive one game and then a cabal the next game. And so it really comes down to your overall kit, or your loadouts rather. So maybe one game you'll have a loadout that's focused on cabal, or you'll have one that's focused on fallen. And that's, again, that adds another element of creativity, but also more gameplay, more fun. So that being said, let's move on to the next mode. So the second mode that I wanted to focus on was less PvP oriented and more PvE driven, which is primarily more casual, but still very explosive, very fun. And when you work together with your team, it really becomes a very rewarding experience. And that mode is Dares of Eternity. Now, what exactly is this mode? Well, it's essentially a mode where you're just fighting off hordes of enemies in this very game show-like format created by Jur and the illustrious Ghost Pony, is what I call them. And so the gameplay itself at its core is just beat as many hordes of enemies as possible. And as you defeat more and more enemies, the game show gets gradually harder toward the very end, and you fight the final boss. And then once you beat the boss, the game show is over. But that's the fun part about it, because everything is kind of thrown at you and you're not too sure what to expect. You get power-ups along the way. But though, at the end of it all, it's just a very explosive, very fun, very active mode for new players to try out. And the spoils you get are really good. They give you, or rather it gives you, an abundance of materials, and you can really get lucky sometimes, and you can get some exotic engrams in there, and that's what really makes the mode fun. It's unpredictable, but it's at the same time straightforward and easy to understand. as a new player coming in. And this is one of the modes that I jumped into when I first started, and it was just a fun blast to play solo, or if you wanted to, you can play with your friends. Either way, it's a fantastic mode. I highly recommend it. And so if you're looking just primarily for a PvE experience, nothing that's, you know, over the top competitive, then definitely try out Dares of Eternity. I think you'll love it. And that being said, let's move on to the last mode. The last and final mode that I feel new players should definitely give a try and really test the waters is the Crucible playlist. And the reason why I say that is because, for one, the New Light campaign does kind of give you an introduction to Crucible pretty early on. And so you get a nice taste of what PvP feels like. And as you can tell by the video, I'm trying to split things up into different categories. So of course, for the Gambit, you've got the best of both worlds. With Dares of Eternity, you've got more PvE, and then in this case, this is primarily and purely PvP. And so if you're looking for a sweaty, you know, non-stop, frantic, action-packed experience, then Crucible is really where it's at. And I know that some may argue, well, this is for, you know, this is new player stuff, and you're telling them to play Crucible. They're going to be, you know, struggling out there. Well, the whole point of Crucible is that, you know, it's sweaty. You know, you're going to naturally come across players who will have better loadouts and what have you. But I think the game does a pretty decent job of matching you up with other players of your level. So if you do happen to come across maybe one or two players who have a pretty stacked loadout, it's totally fine. But my recommendation is, before you do jump into Crucible Hardcore, just, you know, maybe do some homework, figure out what works for you as far as your loadout. And then once you figure out what works for you, just jump in and keep playing. Because just like the Gambit experience, even when you lose, the game still gives you something as a reward. It doesn't give you too much, but it gives you something. And so the experience itself is rewarding, and just, again, the amount of action, the amount of frenzy that happens is really great, because you have 6v6, you have 3v3, so on and so forth. So you have different modes within the playlist itself to dabble with. So let's say you play Apex and you want a more 3v3 format, you've got that. Or you play Overwatch and you want that 6v6, you've got that. You know, or even Halo, you have that. So definitely try Crucible out. You know, you've got different modes, like you have different modes within Crucible. Like you've got Fortress, you've got Control, and both modes are fantastic. In my opinion, I really do enjoy them a lot. So if that's something that tickles your fancy, try it out. Don't be afraid, jump right in, just get some experience and rank up as you go. Because I think the ranking system is pretty decent. And so it's not gonna like throw you, like I said, into the highest level lobbies. There is a placement system, I believe, in some of the modes. So yeah, just jump in. You know, if you really love that sweaty atmosphere and you don't want that PvE, or maybe you just want to break from PvE and you want a little bit more oomph, a little bit more spice in your life, then definitely try out the Crucible playlist. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So that being said, thank you for tuning in. All new players to the community, I hope that you find this content to be useful. If you want to be a part of this faith-based, positive, uplifting community, then be sure, of course, to subscribe. I do stream here on YouTube and on Kick, so if you do have questions on the fly that you want to ask, then be sure to let me and other folks know. That being said, thank you, as always, for tuning in. As always, stay strong, keep fighting, and may the Force be with you always. Peace.